So pests, we think of a lot of pests. And a lot of insects as pests. In fact, mostly it's not little pests. Because you have to realize insects live like 95% of their life before they're adults. When they get to be adults, they usually have a much shorter lifespan. Some of them don't even feed as adults. So this is the stage which is damaging. So why do we hate them? First of all, they eat the plants we grow. And this, anybody want to name it? This is the eastern tent caterpillar. And notice that the eastern tent caterpillar, which is in the spring, is in the crotch of trees, okay? This far out in the fall is the fall webworm, okay? Got that? Now you know, when you see them in the crotch of the trees in the spring, it's one. When you see it in the fall, out of the far ends of the branches, it's the fall webworm. Really easy to remember. So eastern tent caterpillar, fall webworm. And they both do this webbing stuff. Now this, anybody want to guess what this damage is? What'd you say? Actually, it is a sucking insect, but aphids can't suck very far into it. They don't tomato bug. This is a stink bug damage. Now, what you can see here is that clearly the stink bug was feeding on this when the plant was when the fruits were very close to mature, because we don't see that puckering. They didn't get it early. What they're doing is they're just sucking out the juices from individual cells. So that's what we're seeing here. We actually, in North Carolina, we are one of the buggiest states of the union, because all the insects that live in the north, this is on their southern limit, the ones that live in the south, this is their northern limit. Here we are, we got them all. Now, we don't necessarily get the West Coast bugs unless somebody brings them over. The reason the West Coast has so many quarantines is because they don't have the bugs we have, and they don't want to get them. So they carry disease. This is a virus on pumpkin. And this is my own Mayapple, which I'm sorry to say has cucumber mosaic virus transmitted by aphids. Cucumber mosaic virus is and you'll hear about it next week, has a huge host range and spread by aphids. Basically, they feed on one plant, they pick up the virus, they move over to another plant. They say, "Oh, that was very tasty," and they move over to another plant. And so it is that transmission. The aphid is vectoring the virus. And the other problem, of course, is that they can in our belongings. Now, you don't get this problem unless you have a moisture problem. This is termite damage. But you have to have the moisture for the termites to be there. So intervene, I mean, if you think you have a leak in your roof, do not put it off. Deal with it, because it's not just the water that gets in there, it's the fungi and the termites that will actually do a number on it. That said, there are a lot of insects that are really good guys. Some of them eat weed, and some of them eat other insects. So here, I love this picture. So here we have aphids, and we have a ladybug or lady beetle feeding on it. Oh, and I need to say that entomologists have this rule about naming. If you call it a ladybug, it's really a beetle, right? If you call it a ladybug, it's one word. If you call it a lady beetle, it's two words. So horsefly, butterfly. Butterfly is not a fly, but a horsefly is a fly. So honeybee is two words. You will see it everywhere written as one word. It is two words because it's a true bee. Okay, that's a little bit of entomological nomenclature. So what's happening here is the adult ladybug is eating aphids. Anybody guess what's happening with the ant?
Protecting the aphids.
They're actually nursing. Yes, they are. What they'll do, they'll come over with their antennae, but they'll tap on the rear end of the aphid, and the aphid says, oh, I'll give you some honeydew. And the ant takes the drop of honeydew, goes all the way down to her nest underground, feeds it to fungi. The fungi then digest the honeydew and they eat the fungi. This is the circle of life, folks.
Wow.
So you're seeing this stuff, the ants don't eat that honeydew. They just collect it for their fungi, which is, you know, so it makes you realize that when you think you see the story, you might not see the whole story. So is there anything else I need to say about those guys? Okay, another one, this is a Polypes wasp. Wasps pre-digest caterpillars and other soft-bodied insects if they're young. What they do is they provision a nest, they provision a cell with gook, and then they lay an egg, seal it up. The larva, once the larva emerges, will feed on that and then pupate and then go out and reproduce. Some insects parasitize other insects. You probably have all seen this. People say, oh, these are eggs. No, they are pupal cases. This is a teeny tiny perconid wasp. So a female adult, of course, laid a bunch of eggs inside this hornworm. The hornworm ain't gonna make it. But so once the larvae feed inside the hornworm, then they come out and they pupate out here. Then they make a little teeny tiny hole at the top and they fly off and they do it again. So if you find a hornworm like this, you do not want to kill it because A, it's not going to manage to reproduce at all. And B, you've got a whole colony of little parasitic wasps that are going to help you control the next batch of hornworms. Another parasite. This is probably a chalcid wasp. Here it is. Little teeny tiny guy. They lay one egg per aphid. So here we have aphids. These pearly aphids are the ones that are parasitized. So if you see these guys, you think, oh, this is good. This is good. I've got, biological control at its best. Does anybody have an idea of what these little white bits are? Okay, so insects have an exoskeleton. I mean, we grow and our skeleton's inside, but insects cannot, it's like a lobster. In order to get to the next stage, they have to shed. These are all shed skins. So sometimes when you're looking for an insect pest, you might not find the pest because it's moved to the other side of the leaf or to another leaf, but you might find these skins. If you find the skins, then you want to be in high alert to look for see if you still have the pests. And of course, they're very important in pollinating plants. Honeybees are used as pollinators in crops, in large fields, because there is nobody who can get from the edge of a field that's 2 acres across or 20 acres across into the center of the field. So what farmers do is they import honeybee colonies in order to pollinate their crops. In fact, honeybees are lousy pollinators. I mean, everybody's in love with the honeybee. I don't mind. Honeybee is an immigrant brought over by Europeans because they wanted honey. Honeybees are interested in collecting nectar. They might pollinate along the way, and they do collect some pollen because they do actually feed pollen too. But basically, they're nectar collectors. Your better pollinators are in fact your natives, but your natives aren't going to make it into a big field. But a lot of plants, not just agricultural plants, depend upon insect pollination. And of course, some of them are not by bees or wasps, some of them are by beetles. If you have ground ginger, Asarum hexacylus, whatever you want to call it. That has these little pictures down on the ground. That is pollinated by a beetle. It doesn't fly anywhere, it just crawls around on the ground. So when they come up in the spring, pull apart the leaves and look for those flowers. And many insects are decomposers, and this is something that people don't think about. Decomposition is very important, but if we did not have decomposers, we would be in deep because everything would pile up. You know, in order to return nutrients back to the system, plant material has to be broken down. Animal material has to be broken down. We rely on these guys to do this job. So other organisms require that. Okay, now we're gonna go switch gears a little bit. We're gonna talk about taxonomy. Insects are in the animal kingdom. And then a phylum within the animal kingdom is Arthropoda. And we call them arthropods, make it easy. But the fancy name is Arthropoda. And Arthropoda means jointed foot. Now we have jointed feet too. So, you know, why do they name it? They should call it exoskeleton, but they don't. But granted that they renamed it wrong. It is Arthropoda. And we are in a different phylum called Chordata, and we are in the subphylum of vertebrates because we have spines. So that's a big breaking point. So within that group, we have, so the study of entomology includes everything in the Arthropoda. And plant pathology includes nematodes, which are not pathogens. So, you know, we're not going to have a separate program of spiders. So we have trilobites. These are prehistoric, this is a fossil, they don't exist anymore. We have a Chelicerata. Chelicerata have no antennae. They have fang-like chelicerae and 2 body segments. So we have horseshoe crabs. Segment number 1, segment number 2. Arachnids are in the Chelicerata, including scorpions. And you have some, I think you have some scorpions on your desks. Do you have scorpions on your desk? Plastic, they're plastic. And I noticed that these fellows have 4 sets of legs. These are mouth parts. They're majorly changed mouth parts. Daddy long legs. Daddy long legs are actually, we think of them as spiders, but they're not. And then we have mites and ticks. Now, this is the 2-spotted spider mite. This one you probably know if you have any plants around your house. Interestingly, although they have 8 legs as adults, when they first come out, they have only 6 legs. And then as they mature, they gain an extra set of legs. Ticks, 8-legged again. Here we have, believe it or not, this is the cephalothorax. This is the whole head and thorax all together. This is the abdomen. And then spiders. Now spiders, here we have the cephalothorax, the abdomen, and spiders have ocelli, which is a kind of an eye that can see light, but it can't actually see images. It just detects light. So spiders work a lot by vibration and finding their hosts. Here we have a garden spider. Again, cephalothorax, abdomen. So they can and cannot have webs. Other arthropods are the Mandibulata, which includes the crustaceans. And the only terrestrial crustaceans are the isopods. So this is a sow bug. And you see it has, I know you're gonna hate this on here, but it has these two cerci or tail-like appendages at the rear end. The other one that we know is the the pill bug. Okay. Then we have the decapods. Now, interestingly, they also look like they have four, this is well, crab, this is a lobster. It looks like four sets of legs and mouth parts. But in fact, no. Why is it called decapod? And legs. So these are modified front legs. So this is a lobster. Lobsters, shrimp, crabs are decapods. Then we have the millipedes, Diplopoda or diplopods. So these are millipedes, Diplopoda, diplos. So on each side of each segment, there are two legs. Millipedes are decomposers. They do not bite. So it is always safe to pick them up and show a little kid that it's a millipede. But, so here's our giant millipede, which some of you have, and the other one is this flat millipede, and you can see the double legs on each segment. So these are decomposers, they do not bite. They really develop large populations if you have too much moisture in your plants. If you do, then what happens is when they run out of organic matter to eat, that is dead organic, they start eating live organic matter. So they can eat the roots of your plant, but only when they run out of what they would really like to eat, which is the dead organic matter. So, and interestingly, millipedes get longer and get more segments and more length. Now, centipedes, and chylo means lips, actually. So what's happened with centipedes is that
they're on the screen.
these are actually modified legs that are stinging.
Okay.
These guys over here. They sting. Centipedes have only one leg per segment. And of course, we also have the symphylis and the poropods. These are really little. The symphylis, which are the top guys, are less than 1 millimeter long. I mean, we're talking tiny, tiny. And these guys can go up to 8 millimeters long. Still pretty tiny. And they are major decomposers. If you get digging around in the soil and you see these tiny things starting in there, probably these. Okay, but we are finally going to get to insects, which is a class which we call insecta, but you call them insects, which is works just fine. Now, they've been around for around 400 million years. This as first terrestrial organism. The scorpions and the millipedes were around for 440 million years, so they beat them. But the insects were not that far behind. Put that in perspective. Most mammals and plants have been around for 70 million years. So we are talking orders of magnitude that the insects have been around before anything else was around. Here it is, the classic insect. Now, all insects have certain things in common. They have 3 distinct body parts. No cephalothorax. There's a head, cephalus, and thorax, and abdomen. Now, on the thorax is where all the important parts are attached. We have 3 pairs of true legs. All insects have 3 pairs of true legs. Now, I say true because caterpillars has pro legs on their abdominal segments that are not, they're gushy, they're not. Nice, so and they lose them when they go through metamorphosis. They'll have three pairs of true legs, and they have two pairs of wings. Now, I should say that some insects have evolutionarily lost wings in the adult stage. It happens, you accommodate what you have. And they have antennae. And they change as they grow. Now, I should say that, they have these three sets of legs and they have wings. When other animals get wings, like birds or bats, they lose legs that are modified into wings. Insects, they're really separate parts. So they change as they grew. First, we have simple metamorphosis, and this is insects that gradually change from the first nymphal instar. Sometimes they call them larvae, but people can get really fussy. Generally, they're called nymphs if they are do this simple metamorphosis. They gradually change from the egg. Okay, here are eggs. And then we have the immature or the nymphs. I've got to point this way, I guess. Okay, so these fellows have come out. These are true eyes, and then these are compound eyes. You can't see the ocelli here. Then they become larger nymphs. Now they're going through this shedding process as they do this. Generally, most insects have about 5 instars where they're going, then they get to adult. So here we see the eyes, antennae, and look at this. See these wing pads? They are developing wings with each nymphal stage. The wings get a little bit bigger till finally, as an adult, voila, they're sexual and they have wings. No immatures have wings. No immatures can mate. So here we have the compound eyes, and these are the ocelli, the eyes that just detect light. Is there anything to say about that one? Oh, okay, so dragonflies, termites, the bug family, which includes now aphids, so bugs and aphids and their kin, which includes scale insects, etc. Stoneflies, earwigs, the fancy name is Orthoptera, which includes the grasshoppers, the crickets, the mantids, the cockroaches. They all go through simple metamorphosis, so they gradually change from an immature into an adult. Then we have complete metamorphosis, and in fact, most of the insects go through complete metamorphosis, and this I don't have what it includes: moths, beetles, flies, wasps, bees, ants. When I say wasps, bees, ants, they're actually all in one group. Hymenoptera, but we think of them as different. So anyway, they go through. So what they have first is they have an egg. So here we have aphids, but in the midst of the aphids are ladybug eggs. So the ladybug was in there chowing down, laid eggs. Then we have the larva. Now, a lot of people do not know that is the larval form of a ladybug, and they see it like, so this is chowing down on aphids and other soft-bodied insects. Then they pupate. So here you can see the last larval skin is all sort of shriveled up over here. So this is a quiescent stage. Basically, they're hanging out and they're changing their body from one thing to another while they're in the pupal case. I mean, think of a caterpillar which pupates and goes through major changes. I mean, not only do they get wings, but they change from chewing mouth parts to sucking mouth parts, siphoning mouth parts. I mean, this is really, I think of it as a guacamole state myself. It's major reorganization. So after they hang it here, then they become an adult. And these are probably not our native ladybug. I'm going to say a little bit about people buy ladybugs for control. You are buying Asian ladybugs when you do that, and Asian ladybugs eat our native ladybugs. Besides the fact that you put them out and they say, unless you've got a greenhouse where they can't escape, they make tracks. They're gone. So I would just try to rely on your natives. Okay. Respiration. This is important because insects have this tracheal system here, which depends upon getting air in through spiracles on their sides. Okay, so they have to breathe when, just the way you breathe when your diaphragm goes. Basically, when their muscles work in and out, they're pulling air in through their spiracles into the tracheal system, which it provides oxygen to their muscles. Remember, everything is inside. So if they're in water, like a mayfly, their trachea have been modified into these sort of gills, so they can absorb oxygen from the water. Now, this we all know and love is a mosquito. Yes, this is a mosquito larva.
Yeah.
Now, mosquitoes also live as immatures are living in the water. They don't have gills to breathe. So they have this little siphon tube. Comes up. So when you see mosquitoes in the water, they're squiggling around. When they need to take a breath, they come up to the surface and they breathe. So one of the ways that we can interrupt mosquitoes is by using something to cover the film of the water. Now, my husband's father during the Second World War used to go around kerosene soaked rags and throw it into the ditches and the ponds, because that was a way to put a fine layer of oil across the water so the mosquitoes couldn't survive. We don't do that anymore. But that was a control strategy. In fact, soap works too. I mean, you'd use a lot of soap in a pond, so I'm not recommending you do that. But the fact is that soap breaks the surface tension, so they can't hang on. So if you have them in a bucket of water, and you can do this experiment at home, put some soap in and you will see that they go up, but they can't stay up. So they suffocate. The other thing is that because they have these spiracles and they have to breathe through there, if you have any way of coating those spiracles with, say, a horticultural oil or horticultural soap, you're basically suffocating the insects because it coats it and they cannot breathe. So here we have spiracles. This is a Cecropia caterpillar. Here they are along the abdomen. Here they are up on the thorax. So we have head kind of tucked in. Thorax has all the true legs. The abdomen has the prolegs. Most caterpillars have four sets of abdominal prolegs and one set of anal prolegs. Inchworms have only 2 sets of abdominal prolegs, so they go because they can't crawl. So their prolegs are usually just crawling around as caterpillars, and then it turns into a Cecropia moth. And look at they're advertising where their spiracles are. So it's important to think about insecticidal control, non-pesticide insecticidal control if you're trying to control these guys. So Chewing mouth parts. Remember, almost all immature insects have chewing mouth parts, except for the hemiptera, which means those sucking insects, aphids and true bugs. So if you're a herbivore, that is, you eat plants, you have this type of mouth part, where a carnivore has big chunky mouth parts. And filter feeders, these are fellows who feed in the water, underwater, will have these gilled mouth parts. This is my oak tree, not this year, a couple years ago. And you can see the amount of defoliation here caused by the orange striped hookworm. So, and interestingly, this insect feeds, I haven't even seen it yet this year, so it's not feeding yet. It feeds in the fall on mature leaves. And unless you have a really tiny tree that is heavily infested, you do not need to worry about this insect because the leaves have already done their photosynthesizing for the year. The amount that they're going to photosynthesize as older leaves when they're getting ready to drop is minimal. Okay, piercing, sucking. This is a water bug. Okay, it is a true bug. Be careful words. And it has sucking mouth parts, and you can see right here, the mandibles have been modified in order for it to be able to suck. And some sucking insects are predaceous, and some of them are suck on plants. Here's a predator. This is a horsefly. So this fellow really hurts when it pierces and sucks. Mosquitoes. Mosquitoes, it's interesting. They have this sort of sheath that goes around their modified mouth parts. So when they are going to bite, basically you get in there. They sense you, as all insects do. They taste with their feet. And with their antennae, they detect odors. So mosquito may first sort of key in using its antennae. Oh, carbon dioxide, sweat, whatever it is that makes you smell delicious. And some of them are more delicious than others. But anyway, there certainly are people who are more attractive. So they're using their antennae and they're also using their feet to taste. So insects who are plant feeders are generally not using their antennae, although some plants, excuse me, I do not have COVID, I have a cold. Some plants, when they are under stress, exude certain chemicals into the air, and things like the ambrosia beetles will pick up on that stressed plant smell, and they'll say, "Oh, dinner," and they'll come in. And things that feed on mammals generally are going to sense the chemicals from the mammals. Mosquitoes, we know, do this. Now, mosquitoes, insects are temperature dependent on development. So mosquitoes, if it's warm and the water is warm, can take it through 5 days, go complete cycle. Or 7, more like 7, but in the right conditions, they can actually do it in 5. Mosquitoes. There are a lot of our pest insects will go through many generations a year, like 5, 6, 7. Wow. But a lot of our insects are only going through one. Siphoning mouth parts. Now this is butterflies. Butterflies are really interesting. What they've done is their maxillary palps have been modified into these proboscis. Basically, they sort of fuse together. There, look at this. You can even see, now this is electron microscope. You can see the seam where the two parts of the maxillae join. And these are scales. You know, if you've ever held a butterfly, you know that you get this little powdery stuff like it has scales. Butterfly has scales, and this is a wonderful picture of a compound eye. So we've been talking about ocelli, which are these eyes that just pick up light. And then this compound eye, and the compound eye, you probably have seen this, it's like lots of teeny tiny pictures, which this teeny tiny insect brain puts together into an image. Which is, I think, pretty impressive. The sponge and mouth part, this includes flies, house flies. But house flies cannot bite. They cannot chew. They have this little sponge mechanism. So when they get on your food, on your table, they're just sucking up liquid. They are not chewing anything. And then we have combinations, rasping, sucking. Again, no picture here. 1, 2, 4. These are thrips. One thrips, 2 thrips. There is no such thing as a thrip. And thrips are really, really tiny. They tend to be a big greenhouse problem. I'm happy to report that I have no thrips that I have been able to collect. But how they feed is they scrape and they collect, scrape and collect. So that is rasping, scraping, and sucking. The other ones that are important are the chewing, lapping, and that includes a lot of the bees. This is a honeybee head. Now look at this eye. This girl is hairy. And she is hairy everywhere except for her tongue. Well, actually, even her tongue looks a little hairy. But you can see these hairs all over. You can understand why when they get into a plant, they are covered with pollen. They don't just manage to pack it on their little pollen sacs. They manage to get it all over themselves. This is a girl. You can tell because of the size of her eyes. See, they're over here and over here. Male honeybees, they have one job. They can't even feed themselves. They are completely dependent on the workers to feed them. And they have really big eyes, almost like fly eyes, almost to the center of their heads, because their job is to find the girls. So what honeybees do is very short. Okay, they provision their honeycomb. They make honeycomb in different sizes. When they make a honeycomb that is the size of a queen cell, which is a little bit bigger than the rest of them, what they do is they feed them special food. So they grow into queens. And a queen is identical to the workers, but she is, I'm sorry, because she is a queen, is able to reproduce. So they'll have special cells for the queens, special cells for the drones. When it's that time of year for them to do this mating thing, the drones come out, the queens come out. Oh, before the queens come out, the queen who's already in the colony is basically kicked out. They starve her. They said, you've got to go, she can't fly otherwise. So they get her really hungry, and then some of the workers go out. I don't know how they decide which ones go in and which ones aren't. They go out and they find another place to hang out and start another colony. So they find this place, they go back. Sometimes you find them in a sort of a halfway point where you see these swarms that they're not really going to stay there. They've just left the colony and they're looking for the next space to go. Once they're out, they bring the queen over and they all hang out together. They produce these lovely pheromones. It's really nice. They're really, really calm and they move out. Once the queen is out, the other queens who have been developing, have pupated, are ready to come out of their cell. The first one who comes out, this is kind of nasty, she comes out, she starts thrumming. And then all the other ones who are still in their cells start thrumming. She goes around and she nails each one. They want one queen.
Right.
You can't have more than one queen in a colony. So then she goes out and there are these places, and they don't know how. They don't really know how they decide where these places are, but they're almost the same every year, where the drones all hang out and the queens fly over and they mate with a drone. And then she will pull out, he gets eviscerated with this. And she will pull out his genitalia, mate again. Pull out his genitalia, mate again. When he returns to the colony, they will want to be sure she has somebody's genitalia attached to her, meaning she's been doing her job. If she's not been doing her job, they won't let her come back. So she has to leave, and she'll go out for a few days doing this. Until she has all these separate egg sacs inside with the sperm, and then when she gets over a cell, she decides whether it's a drone cell or a worker cell, a queen cell, and she decides whether or not to mix the sperm with the egg. Drones are haploid, the females are diploid. Bees tend to have these articulated antennae. Moths have the female moths have slightly plumose antennae. The male moths have really plumose antennae because what they're doing, their one job, find girls. So their antennae are picking up pheromones from the female. So you can easily tell when you have a moth whether it's a girl or a boy. And I want to say something about how you can tell what kind of damage you have on a plant. These are pipeline swallowtails, and this is Virginia snakeroot. This was in my yard. And see how they're working from the outside of the leaf. Leps feed on the outside of the leaves. Some of them are skeletonizers, which means they sort of go across it and you can take off a layer and leave the veins behind. Beetles tend to make holes in the middle of leaves. So sometimes, and so do slugs. So if you have holes in the middle of the leaves, you get up early enough in the morning and it's a slug, then you will see slug trails. So you will know it ain't a beetle. If you're up and you see these holes, and flea beetles are tiny and they make tiny holes, and bigger beetles make bigger holes. So I want to talk a little bit about what we find as pest insects. So we have the plant pests, which include the bugs and the aphids and their kin, including scale insects. Caterpillars, which as larvae have chewing mouth parts. They are all quite popular. There are no predaceous caterpillars. There are no predaceous butterflies or moths either. But caterpillars are chewers. Beetles are chewers. And leaf miners are often flies. Basically, you'll see them on things like columbines, where you see this little leaf. This is somebody who is, as a larva, chowing down on the inside of the leaf. Grasshoppers and their kin are also plant pests. Then we have what we call the nuisance pests. That is the ones we wish weren't around. Wasps, ants, and bees actually are doing really good jobs, but we may not like them. But they really are good. Flies, mosquitoes, we know that they can carry diseases and other kinds of things. Moths and beetles, generally, we don't think of them as pests, except they can eat wool and other fabrics. So in your house and grains, you really don't want moths and beetles. Ticks and fleas, of course, are problematic, feeding on mammals. Cockroaches, we don't like them because they're just dirty. I mean, we associate cockroaches with dirt. In fact, they're really good outside. We don't want them. Crickets, again, and the animals that the insects we consider pests because they're swarming. So it's not that they're gonna bother us. Matter of fact, as I mentioned, honeybees are producing this wonderful pheromone, which keeps them all mellow. But people get scared of them anyway. We find if somebody calls us and say, I have a swarm, we have the phone number for the beekeepers of North Carolina and the beekeepers of Wake County. And we call them up and somebody says, oh, well, I'll get it because this is, somebody wants a swarm. Aphids, suckers, okay? This is a founder. Aphids generally don't overwinter around here. They go through a sexual stage, which is winged. So this female flew in. She will come in. Now she is going to live bear. That is that there's no egg stage anymore. She is going to start just popping out little tiny aphids. Very quickly, as you can see, and this is my iris, have already grown into a good size. So they are now popping out more babies. Parthenogenetic, they're clones of each other. So they're gonna just keep going. So this is why it's really important to get out there early in the season and look for her. Because she's the start. If you can, the sooner you can interrupt a colony from developing, the easier it is to control it. Insecticidal soaps work. Again, we're gonna smother them. But you can see, she's still alive and they're probably 30 aphids already there that she's produced and her offspring are producing. So get them while they're young. So corn earworm, you'll love this. Corn earworm is called corn earworm when it's on corn, and they harvest the corn and moves over to tomatoes, and we give it a new name. It's the same insect. This is it. It's in the Noctuity, which is a really, really large family in the moth family, the Lepidoptera. They tend to be really plain. Of course, they're moths, so they fly at night. So she's flying around, she's eating nectar. Remember, she has siphoning mouth parts, which means that as opposed to piercing something and sucking something out, she goes in and she siphons out, which is a different mechanism. Here we have the tomato fruit worm. They come in a lot of different colors, but they are slightly hairy. And here we have it as the corn earworm. Same thing. Now, what I want to point out here is this is BT corn on two sides. This is non-BT corn. I am a proponent of using genetically modified plants because we can interfere with, there are diseases like papaya. They could not grow papaya if they did not have genetically modified papaya. Every papaya that's grown today is genetically modified because there's a fungus that destroys them. The corn, by putting BT into it, what it does is it interferes with the feeding of all leps. So basically, the corn earworms, they might start a little nibble and then it's like, it's over. So the way it works, BT works, which is Bacillus thuringiensis, and there are a number of different substrains of it. The way it works is that insect guts are basic, that is the pH around 9 or so. Our guts are acidic, as are the guts of every single vertebrate. So Bacillus thuringiensis only works in basic guts. What it does is as it sporulates, it creates a toxin. The toxin actually punches holes in their guts, and they die. So what using, now you can't use all BT corn. There, as a matter of fact, there was a recent thing that came up from NC State talking about how whether there were reduced losses if you did not use all BT, because they are concerned with resistance development. As with anything they're using, resistance is a possibility, although I don't see how guts are going to change their pH, to tell you the truth. But when they use BT corn, it means they're not using insecticides. They're not driving over the fields, compacting the soil. They're not putting out insecticides which are broad spectrum. You know, they're killing everything. You can also use BT as an organic farmer, as a dust that you can sprinkle on. But in a big field, you can't go out there and dust it. You want to get something that's really going to work. Peach tree borer is another insect that is a problem for us. This insect shows sexual dimorphism. Girl is on the right, male is on the left. And what they're going to do is they're in the process of mating. She's going to lay eggs right at the base of a peach tree. Those larvae are going to come down and they're going to eat the roots. Another one is bagworms. And we've probably all seen bagworms. They usually feed on coniferous plants. They really like cedars. They're not limited to coniferous plants, but mostly that's what they're feeding on. And it's really interesting. What they do is, as larvae, they're feeding and they start carrying around this bunch of junk. And this is all plant material. So they're carrying around all these bits of plant material. When they get ready to pupate, they kind of form this cone around themselves. So just their head is sticking out for feeding. So it means that it's very hard to use a pesticide on them. And then they take some of their thread that they use for pupating and they tie themselves up to the branch. They pupate inside the branch. Now this is a male. So what the male has done is he's pushed his way out as a pupa, just wiggling and jiggling. If you ever find a caterpillar, a left pupa, and you want to know if it's alive, you give it a little squeeze and go, and you'll know it is still alive. So he pushes his way out, splits open, climbs out, gets up there, does this. Because their wings are all shut, so they have to pump fluid through their wings to get them, and then they have to bake for a little bit. And look at those antennae. Those are plumose antennae because they have to find females. Now, the interesting thing is that the female never leaves the bag. She never has legs as an adult. She doesn't have wings as an adult. She ain't going nowhere. The males will find the females in their bags. They will push their abdomen, the male's abdomen, up into the female's bag, a couple of centimeters actually, mate with the female. The female is still stuck in her bag. She then produces eggs. She dies, and the larvae, which are then in a crawling stage, come on out. If people are going to use insecticides, this is when they hit them, when they've just come out because they're not covered by anything. The best way to control bagworms is by cutting off the bags. So you watch for them. Now, the larvae can spin webbing and go to the next shrub. They can't go across the yard. They can get to the next shrub. So you see bagworm infestations, and it starts here, and then it's here, and then it's here, then it's here, and then before you know it, because people haven't done anything about it, they've got an entire row of cypress which is gonzo. And it can actually happen. But if you get out there and you see these bagworms, the pupae, cut them off. You don't know whether you have a male or a female bag, you want to cut them off. Beetle pests, Japanese. Yeah. Now, the adults during mouth parts really like plants in the rose family. And look at the holes. Here we have holes. They're not feeding from the outside. They're making holes. They tend to aggregate on plants, so you get a whole bunch of them. And I have known people to vacuum them off their plants with a little vacuum job. If you do that, you want this to be a dedicated vacuum, because they rot. They stink. So anyway, so these are the adults. One generation a year, okay? So the females have mated, they've been feeding up in the shrubs. They come down, they lay eggs in the ground. The larvae develop, here we have, in June, they're doing this. They're going during the summer, all the way through to December, then they're sort of hanging out. They're underground, so they can still feed on roots. What are they feeding on? Grass. This is why people hate Japanese beetles, because they destroy their grass. So they come, and then as they finish maturing, going through the last instars, they pupate and climb out, because they're very close to the surface of that point. They climb up and they start again. So here we have the different stages of the larvae. Spiracles. Chewing mouth parts. So ways to interrupt them are, first of all, don't water your lawn a lot, because wetter areas are more attractive for their laying eggs than dry areas. Second thing is, some people have used milky spore disease. The problem with milky spore disease is that if once you've got the beetle population under control, the milky spore disease does not survive in the soil until you lose it. So then the beetles come back because there's no more milky spore, and you started the cycle. It can work, it's not terribly effective. Another thing that has just been released is a BT specific to scarab beetles, which you can put on your lawn. Now, the problem is that it also gets June beetles, it gets all the scarab beetles that there are. Is just as the BT for leps is not specific, the BT for these guys is not specific, species specific, I should say. But, you know, if you have a problem, it is, and it probably will be used commercially on golf courses. Southern pine beetle, I love this picture because, you know, the beetles have these hard front wings, which are called elytra, another fancy word. But look at their hind wings. Basically, they fold them all up inside, and when they get ready to fly, they open the front wing and they unfold the hind wings, and they fly just with the hind wings. So this attacks pine trees. And again, they tend to attack trees that are already stressed. So keep your trees in good health and you're less likely to have a problem with it. Let me see where the heck I am here. And the larvae feed on the phloem of the tree. If you get enough larvae in there and they're just, you know, the phloem is just inside that bark layer, they can actually girdle a tree and destroy it. And if you go to Umstead, they had very serious infestation some years ago of pine bark beetle. It looked like a hurricane, a tornado came through there. There were just trees down everywhere due to pine bark beetle. So this leads us to controlling insects. Integrated pest management. This is what NC State is really promoting. It's a key word is management. That is that we're not trying to eradicate pests. We want to manage the pest. Prevention is the first most important thing you can do. So monitor, walk the walk. Looking for those aphids out there in the spring. You know, this spring I have some rudbeckia, some brown-eyed Susan. I looked over at someone and I said, yeah, those have really thick pink stems. And I got closer, and those stems were covered with aphids. One plant, I had 4 plants, the other 4, the founder hadn't got there. She had laid all of her first offspring on one plant. And that plant was, those stems were unbelievably covered. Got out my insecticidal soap, sprayed the chickens out of them. And then actually with after insecticidal soap, if you have a plant which is sensitive to the soap, because it does kind of mess things up a bit. You know, they have stomates, we don't want to plug up their stomates. Wash it off, give it a little time, let it dry, wash it off, and then check again. Because you may not have got them all. But keeping an eye on what's happening in your garden, people call and they say, I have this incredible infestation and it wasn't there yesterday. Right. I just didn't see it yesterday. I mean, that's what happened with me with these aphids, was I didn't see them until I had thousands. Horticultural oils are often used for scale insects because scale insects are really difficult to get anything onto. And basically, it's the same sort of suffocation. With horticultural oils, you need to be very careful because if you think soaps could cause a problem to a tree, oils can really cause a problem. Not on bark, but on leaves themselves. So there are insecticidal oils that are used in winter, like we have gloomy scale on red maple here out the wazoo. You know, red maple is one of these plants where it's planted in miles. You look down the street and there's like 40 of them. Well, it's just heaven. The scale insect adults, it's fine. So they will move onwards and onwards. And so this is, you can control it with a horticultural oil applied during the winter. What we need to do is stop planting rows of red maples. We need to have some variety so that, oh yeah, it goes to the next tree, but I can't feed on that one. So you want to identify your pest and your host as best you can. Now you could say it's a maple. That's good. It's an oak. That's good. It's an aphid. That's good. You don't have to get down to the species. And I really recommend you consider downloading iNaturalist to your phone. It is free. It is not always accurate, but it will start. And they will not say definitively it's something they'll say, we think it is, and they'll give you 4 or 5 choices. Now, I know that I've taken pictures of a beetle larva that I want to show what it was, and it said it's a lemon. I know it's not a lemon. So they're not perfect, but it is a start. Then you want to look at what you see for damage. You want to decide whether or not it's worth treating. Is it at a threshold level? You know, we talked about those orange striped oak worms. I don't care. I'll just sweep the frass away from the driveway. It doesn't matter. It's not going to damage the tree enough that the tree is going to be harmed by it. So you need to figure out at what point you need to interfere. You know, if you have stink bugs and they haven't completely demolished your tomatoes, but you've got those little spots all over, you can still eat them.
I have so many tomatoes that I can.
Okay, so the threshold is the point at which you say, I have to do something about this. Then you want to figure out what your treatment strategy should be, and there are a lot of different choices for treatment. And I'm going to talk more specifically about these. And then after you treat, you want to figure out, did it work? Oh my God. Okay, cultural control. How are you going to do this? Tolerant plants. Now, when I say tolerant plants, how much are you going to tolerate? And also, some plants are bred to be resistant to diseases. They're not bred to be resistant. Now, trees have their own mechanism because tender growth doesn't have lignin in it, and it is easier to digest. Whereas young growth doesn't have lignin in it. We plant our gardens and our perennials, and it's all tender growth. Clean out infested material, particularly for diseases, although even for insects, if you have insect pests and you see them infesting a bunch of leaves, you can pluck off those leaves. Maintain healthy plants, take care of the garden. And don't use too much nitrogen, because the more nitrogen you use, the faster the plant grows, the more delicious it is. Natural control, minimize pesticide use, because the fewer insecticides you use, the more you're gonna allow spiders and beneficial insect to survive. Biological control, we mentioned BT. Also, BT is for mosquitoes. If you have a small pond or a fountain or something, promote predators. Don't release late to waste time, but otherwise, the more you can not disrupt the environment, the more predators you're likely to have. And finally, chemical control. This is a last resort, should be a last resort. Now, that said, if you have fire ants, you don't have a choice. You really don't have a choice. You've got to use bait. Don't sprinkle this stuff directly on top of the mound. Doesn't work very well. Another problem right now is crepe myrtle scale.
Yeah.
We got calls unbelievably last year about crepe myrtle scale, and they're not very mobile. Most of the spread probably these days is when somebody's cut down a tree and they've got it in the back of the truck and they're driving along. Blow it off. It's the only thing, if you have a small enough tree, you can treat it with a horticultural oil. If you have a big tree, there's no way you can treat it with a horticultural oil. I mean, you could pay somebody like Leaf and Limb or some other company to get up there and actually try to do it. It's going to take repeat applications. The thing that works are systemic neonicotinoids. Now, I am not in favor of systemic insecticide. I would say, get rid of your crepe myrtle, frankly. And some nurseries have now stopped carrying this crepe myrtle for exactly that reason, that this pest is not going to go away. If you can't stand that, then you can use a systemic pesticide. The problem with systemics is they go everywhere in the plant. So anybody who's collecting nectar and collecting pollen and anybody who is feeding on that plant besides the target pest is also dead on arrival. So, and a systemic pesticide, you put it around your plant. And what happens is you've got a plant over here and that root system also goes into that same area. Oh, now we really are at dark, which is just because there's a couple minutes here. So this is an azalea. And here's the underside of the leaves. The black spots, that's not a very good arrow, are poops. Insect poop. So what we see is feeding on the underside of the leaves, which is causing this stippling. Any guesses? What it could be spider mites. Another possibility is another sucking insect.
Thrips.
Well, probably not. Thrips are really. I suspect lace bugs. I'm sorry, lace wings are predation. Lace bugs are in that aphid family. They're suckers. So basically, they're feeding underneath. And here we see a little bit of larval skins. So how are you going to treat it? You could say, well, my new growth looks good. So clearly the plant has managed to outgrow this. These leaves are basically gone. I mean, they're history. Any ideas what you would do? Pruning them? You could prune out, which is fine. Yeah, you could. You don't want to completely defoliate your plant, but you can do that. You could use an insecticidal soap. Yep. Okay, this is a zucchini. And here we see at the bottom, right there.
Every year.
Squash board. So, well, how we're gonna try to control it? If you can protect the base of the plant, you can control it. Now, my sister has a problem, and what she did was she put up 1/4-inch netting because the moths can't fly through it. So she basically tented her vegetables, and she had raised beds, and she tented them. Yeah, rotation. Well, we talk about cultural control, rotation. More important for diseases than for insects, but definitely you do not plant tomatoes in the same place year after year because North Carolina recommends a 3 to 5 year rotation on tomatoes because of tomato diseases. You know, and I've known people who said, but I have to put it there, that's my sunny spot. Fine, get a pot, put in clean soil and do it that way. But you can't put it back in the same soil again, because you're gonna have whatever disease was there or insects, you know.